Shabbat Shalom, happy Sabbath. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sabbath Service, AM to the U.S., PM to the U.K. for this, well, let's see, it's the same date on the Hebrew calendar as it was last night. Let me come on camera with you and be able to see the lower third at the bottom. It's the 14th day of the 10th month on God's holy sacred calendar. And good morning, everyone. It is morning for me here. It's 9:30 a.m. in the Central Time Zone, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, 2:30 and 3:30 in different parts of the United Kingdom and Europe, and 4:30 and 5:30 p.m. in Israel and the Middle East and parts of the Far East. Hope you had a good night's sleep and are ready for the service this morning. We're going to begin with some wake-up music. Well, I did mention the date, did I not? I mentioned that it's the 14th day of the 10th month on God's holy sacred calendar. Let's just quickly make a reference to how that transposes over to the Roman calendar, the Gregorian calendar. It's the 18th day of December on that calendar. Let's see, I think I can bring that a little closer like this. We're in the last month of the year, and we're just 1 week away from a big holiday that the world observes a week from today. You do kind of want to be aware of that because people are in a different mood, a different spirit of sorts on that day, a week from today. And where we are on this pagan Roman calendar is the 18th day of December, a weekly Sabbath. And what's that look like? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 more days, and we hit 2022 on that Roman calendar. And so we'll be switching that. We do have a calendar. I'll show it to you after we sing a hymn already made out for 2022 with the feast days highlighted, feast days, holy days highlighted on the 2022 Roman calendar to make it easy to transpose. We also have this on our calendar page. We have a summary of the feast for next year, just in one area right there, starting with the Passover through the last great day. But let's go ahead and zip over here. I'll show you where all that is in a moment. Let's zip over here and open up singing with this psalm we all really need to be sure we get down and understand that when we obey God, we are blessed and happy. And just the opposite, when we don't obey God, God lets us have some cursings on our lives. Now, sometimes people will put those type of cursings on you, but you can stay blessed and happy when you're obeying God, knowing that God's going to provide you a way out of that trial and a blessing with it. And maybe some lessons learned in the process. But I think we're ready to go. Let's all sing this one together. You know, even if you're not awake, and I'm not awake, and that's why I'm punching into this early, to help me wake up. And if you're watching from your bed or just gotten up, if you're in the United States, especially in certain parts of it, especially if you're west of here, it's like 7:30 on the West Coast, California and Oregon and Washington. And, you may really want to sing to wake up. Blessed and happy is the man who never walks astray. Everybody together on verse 1. Blessed and happy is the man who does never walk astray. On verse 2. There is Lord's chair, he says, for he places his delight in God's verse 3.
We shall be a tree that grows, planted by the riverside, which in season yields its fruit, green its leaves abide. All the just prospers well, but the wicked are not so. They are chaff before the wind, driven to and fro.
All right, brethren, thank you to all of you who sang along with us on that one. I don't know about you, but the hymns give me a nice, cheery, bright feeling. Greetings to our end-time apostle who will be speaking to us this morning as if it were from the grave, as he takes us over to Athens, Greece. And he shares the meetings he had there and the speaking engagement he had, which really shows how mightily God opened up the doors of travel before world leaders for his end-time apostle to travel more miles by one man than all the early 12 apostles combined. So we'll be coming back to him in just a moment. Greetings to Dane, who's really doing a tremendous job of sacrifice and service. Greetings to his son Jacob. And they're looking to move to Jacob's brother's area in Texas here soon. And what are we going to do? We're singing another hymn. Oh, so I'm looking for another hymn. Let's sing this one from Psalm 9. I will praise thee, O eternal. Everybody together on verse 1.
Praise thee, O eternal, I will show forth thy great works. O thou most high God, eternal, I will sing praise to thy name. And thy foes shall turn and stumble, at thy presence they shall fall. The eternal judges rightly, and forever he will rule.
Everybody, verse 2.
Eternal is forever, he destroys all wicked men. He removes their name forever, even their memory dies. But he judges all with fairness, he will rule with equity. All who know his name shall trust him, he will not forsake his own.
Verse 3. 2.
The Lord who dwells in Zion, sing to him and praise his name. Tell his deeds among the nations, tell of all his glorious works. He avenges all his people, he will not forget their cry. To the Lord who dwells in Zion, sing to him and praise his name.
All right, brethren, thank you again for those of you who sang along with us. We'll plan to sing another one a little bit later in the program. But I tell you what I'd like to do. I'd like to just zip right into Mr. Armstrong right from the beginning on this Sabbath service morning and hear about his trip to Athens, Georgia, and the many wonderful things God did through him and the things that he'll share that we should have refreshed in our minds. God's end-time apostle speaking this time from 1983. This is the first telecast in the year 1983 on his Athens, Greece meetings. God's end-time apostle, Herbert W. Armstrong.
The whole world soon will be stunned by the announcement or the news of a new amalgamated nation appearing suddenly in Europe, possibly more powerful than either the Soviet Union or the United States. Now, recently, I addressed the very prestigious Rotary Club of Athens, Greece, concerning this very situation that is rising over there, this very new development. And now I want to give you a very brief commentary on the ancient city of Athens, narrated by Art Gilmore and followed by my address before the Rotary Club of Athens in Greece.
Athens, the ancient cultural center of the world, is considered to be the birthplace of Western civilization. At its peak, during the 400s BC, Athens was the world's most powerful and most highly civilized city. From it sprang works of drama, history, poetry, and philosophy that have greatly influenced literature and thought throughout the centuries. Athenian architects built masterpieces of classical beauty. The ruins of many of these structures still stand as monuments to that age. The large flat hill called the Acropolis is surmounted by the Parthenon, the finest building constructed in ancient Greece. Its white marble columns seem to define classical Greek architecture. Across from the Acropolis stands Mars Hill, where the Apostle Paul revealed to the Athenians of his day the identity of the unknown God to which they had erected an altar. Paul also traveled to Corinth, directly west of Athens, and established a thriving church. Intriguing ruins of temples, roadways, markets, fountains, and theaters still stand today. East of the Acropolis, the first of the modern Olympic Games were held in Athens in 1896 in the Panathenaic Stadium, constructed of marble. It can hold 70,000 spectators. Today, Athens is the cultural as well as the financial center of Greece. Athens' Elefsis Bay reflects the importance of Greece in the world's shipping and petrochemical industries. The influential Greek Orthodox Church numbers among its membership the great majority of the population of Athens. Into this great city, rich in history, culture, and religion, came Herbert W. Armstrong, bearing a message which had not been heard in Athens since the days of the Apostle Paul. Mr. Armstrong was invited to address the Athens Rotary Club. Its membership consists of many of the leading businessmen and financiers of Greece, including the head of Olympia Airlines, the national airline of Greece, George Voyadis, a leading member of Greece's parliament, and Konstantin Ringas, president of Hellenic Mediterranean Shipping Lines.
Dear Mr. Armstrong, it's a great pleasure for me, and I could even say an honor for me, to welcome you to our city and to our club, which is the senior Rotary Club of Greece. But I'm passing over to my language in Greek because I would like that all people would partake of this welcome we are going to be giving you. Thank you. Η σημερινή συναισθίασής μας, αγαπητοί φίλοι, είναι αφιερωμένη.
Our gathering today, dear friends, is devoted to world understanding and peace. A very highly respected and distinguished citizen of the United States of America is to honor tonight the rostrum of our club, Mr. Herbert Armstrong.
For
the Greek Rotarians, Your presence as an ambassador of world peace at this rostrum is indeed a joy and a satisfaction, because your efforts coincide with this year's theme of the International Rotary Club, humanity as a whole, building bridges of friendship around the world. I wish to welcome you to our club and would like now to request the ex-minister and current member of Parliament, Mr. George Voyadzis, to briefly introduce you. Mr. President, I would like, first of all, to thank most warmly the Rotary Club for giving the possibility to our honored guest, Mr. Armstrong, who is only staying for a short while here, to speak to you tonight. Because this man, whom I had the opportunity to meet personally on my trip to America when I visited the college he has founded in Pasadena, is one of the very few people in the world who both proclaims and applies the theme and the idea of peace without any personal incentives whatsoever. The mere fact that a magazine is being published at Ambassador College by Mr. Armstrong, which is entitled The Plain Truth, and which is distributed throughout the world with a circulation of 5.5 million copies. A magazine that declares, proclaims, and supports the ideas of world peace and the love of fellow man. This mere fact makes Mr. Armstrong a man unique in the world, a pioneer in his field. So, I will say no more, because I am sure that we are waiting to listen to Mr. Armstrong and to the message he has to bring to us.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It certainly is a great honor to be able to speak to the Rotary Club here in Athens, Greece, one of the most ancient cities in the world and the home of education, scholarship, and culture. I come to you as an unofficial ambassador for peace. Millions of men have given their lives in the interest of peace in wars. World War I was supposed to have been the war to end all wars, but it didn't end war. World War II didn't end war. There have been dozens and scores of wars since that time. War and threats of war are continuing to go on. The reason we do not have peace is because people do not know the way to peace. But we live in a world today of awesome progress. Especially in this 20th century, the progress has been absolutely awesome. At the same time, we are living in a world of appalling evils, troubles, heartaches, suffering, starvation. One half of this world is in absolute ignorance, uneducated. One half of this world is in abject poverty, living in filth and squalor. And such a condition ought not to be. Right now, we are in escalating troubles. Crime and violence, disagreement between nations, and never has the world been as unrighteous as it is now in its living and in the dealings of people back and forth with one another or with nations. Armies do not bring peace to a country. We have not learned the way to peace. In November of 1919, that's quite a while ago, November 1919, I was a member of the Association of Commerce in Chicago, the Chicago Association of Commerce, and at a noonday luncheon of the members, the businessmen members of that association, Roger Babson, the great statistician, was our main speaker. Roger Babson said, "In 1 year, we are going to be in the throes of the greatest depression this generation has ever known." Present were many officials of great banks, presidents and board chairmen of great industrial corporations. They shook their heads. They didn't agree with him. 1 year later, November 1920, Roger Babson was the speaker before the Chicago Association of Commerce again. He said, "The year has gone by, I am back, and the depression I foretold is here with me." Mr. Babson said, "There has to be a cause for everything that happens." I want to tell you how I knew this depression was going to come and why you didn't know. I was looking at the cause of conditions. You were not. When I want to know what the temperature is in this room in the winter, I look at the thermometer on the wall. Mr. Babson said, "You bankers and you business executives were looking at the thermometers on the wall. They only recorded what was happening up to that time, not what was going to happen. You were looking at bank clearings, you were looking at stock car loadings, you were looking at wholesale prices and consumer price indexes." But he said, "I was looking at the cause of conditions. I have found that when 51% of the whole population is unrighteous in its dealings with one another, we are going to have an economic depression." There are two basic principles I would like to bring to your attention in life, in our dealings with one another, how we live. One is, two people cannot walk together and get along together unless they agree. The other is, one of the two must lead. There must be leadership if you're going to agree and have peace. Now, regarding European unification, yesterday I was having a meeting with some of the officials of your country, and there was considerable discussion about the plans for the unification of Europe. As one of your officials said, world peace depends upon European unification. We not only have language barriers between the nations and nationalism, different aspirations and differences which have to be overcome, but many of the political leaders feel that they do not want to be church-dominated, and yet they're not going to be able to get together without the cohesiveness of church domination and the church bringing them all together. You see, even the church is divided between East and West. I can tell you, however, that I fully believe that rift is going to be healed. And I fully believe that unification will be unexpectedly and suddenly achieved, and the whole world is going to be stunned and astounded when it is announced that there is, in the continent of Europe, a new political unification, a nation as great or greater than the Soviet Union or the United States of America. Up to now, the principle of two walking together in agreement has not occurred. The churches have not walked together. The nations have not walked together. Different nations have their different aspirations, and they go to war over their ideas and to settle their disputes. Now, how did this spirit of antagonisms between individuals, between families, between nations, how did it all arise? How did it start? We look back to origins, and it had to be one of two origins. It either had to be evolution, or it had to be special creation by the great creator God. The theory of evolution, which has become the very basis of all education today, especially in the latter half of the 19th century and through this 20th century, is the accepted idea of origins. It has not produced any peace. It does not give us any idea of why we're in the troubles we are. It gives us no solution, and it gives us no hope for the future. The Christian religion actually started, you might say, almost here in this country. All of the New Testament is written in the Greek language. Much of the early fathers of the Christian religion were living and working here in Greece. Now, in the religion of your country here, you will read in the New Testament, in John, the first chapter and the first 5 verses, that in the beginning, before anything else, was a great personage called the Word. And the Word was with another great personage named God. And yet they were both God, because it says, and the Word was God. In verse 14 of that same chapter, you will read that the Word later was born as Jesus Christ. Christ always loved the Father and said, I have obeyed my Father and kept his commandments. In other words, two can't walk together except they be agreed. God and the Word were completely in agreement. They agreed completely. And also, one had to be the leader. God has always been the leader. Christ had said, I have obeyed my Father. He is the leader. So they had perfect peace. Now, the way they lived together and cooperated together was love. Agape, you call it in Greek. And that became a law. Now, a law is merely the directions of how you're going to live, like the rules in a sports game of some kind that regulates how you perform the sport or how you live. And God's way of life is outflowing love or concern for the good and welfare of others. In due time, God created man. Now, God had explained to the first man, Adam, his way, his law of love, of cooperation, of getting along together, of agreeing. But he gave him his choice, and man took, as you read in the incident of the forbidden fruit, he took of the knowledge of good and evil to decide for himself what is right or what is wrong. In other words, he took to himself the knowledge of what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is evil. It's the way of get instead of the way of cooperation and give. And man has been living that way ever since. This first man, Adam, taught his children that way. His oldest son, Cain, killed his brother Abel, and then he lied to God about it. And people have not been getting along ever since. Even today, we're all antagonistic one against another, and selfishness seems to rule mankind, and has ever since. Now, we call it human nature. The result is the world has become all divided. And we do lack leadership. Now, I said a while ago that unification of Europe is going to occur, and the whole world will be stunned when it does. Also, now we have the weapons of mass destruction. For the first time, 29 to 30 years ago, when the hydrogen bomb was finally perfected, that can annihilate every human being, every human life on the face of the earth. And now it is recorded in the book of Matthew that a time of trouble is going to follow the unification of Europe, and that the trouble will be so great. And the Bible says that nuclear World War III is going to come, definitely. Now that should shock you, but it is true. It is going to happen, and in our lifetime. That same passage, talking about this terrible time of World War III, also says that except God supernaturally intervened to stop it, there would not be a human life left alive on the face of this earth. But God will intervene. The world will be spared. Christ will come. He is going to rule all nations on the earth. He's going to rule Greece. He's going to rule Germany. He's going to rule Russia. He's going to rule the United States, Japan, and China. Every nation. And he is going to bring peace. And they're going to beat the weapons of war into weapons of production. And people are going to learn to get along with one another. People are going to learn to cooperate instead of trying to fight one another. We're going to learn the two can't walk together except they be agreed, but we're going to have leadership, and that leadership will be Jesus Christ now coming as the great supernatural God in the full power of God. Now, in a sense, the unification of Europe may trigger this whole thing that will result in final world peace. So perhaps the official who said yesterday morning that world peace depends upon it, perhaps he was right after all. But just before this passage in Matthew 24 that I told you about, verse 14 says that when this gospel of the kingdom is proclaimed all over the world to all nations, then will these things shortly come. I am proclaiming that message, and it's the first time in over 1900 years that that message has been proclaimed to the world. It's the same message that Jesus Christ proclaimed. But people have been preaching a gospel of men about Christ, about the person of Christ, and his gospel was what I've just told you, and that has not been preached. You have heard that fulfillment in your ears here this evening. I ask you, if you have ears to hear, please heed. Thank you very much. And now I would like to send you, gratis, a book I've offered once or twice before on this program. Are we living in the last days? Can you prove it? Are we actually living in the last days of this present world, of this present civilization? It's a very shocking situation. You need to know the time in which you're living. You know, Jesus Christ said one time, you can tell by the weather signs whether it's going to rain or whether you're going to have sunshine, but do you know the signs of the times? Do you know what is going on in the world? We need to know the condition of the world in which we live. This booklet is Are We Living in the Last Days? Now, there's no charge, no request for money. I would like to send it to you absolutely free. So until next time, this is Herbert W. Armstrong. Goodbye, friends.
All right. right, a big thank you to God for inspiring and providing to us one of his most faithful servants of these latter days, whom God, through many mighty works, made Herbert W. Armstrong our end-time apostle. And there is no other. There's only the one. Brother, let's, and I hope you got the benefit of seeing how God took him. Those men were focusing all eyes in an area where, as Mr. Armstrong pointed out to them, a lot of the Bible was originated in that area where it had been, written in the Greek language. And let's sing another hymn. Let's see, I've got to go this way to do that. And I had such a week, brother, and I hope you had a good week, but I had such a week, I am still waking up this morning. And let's see, we did sing that one already, I'll Praise You. Let's sing about one that relates to those, most of you who are tuned in here this morning, who will be those reigning and ruling with Jesus Christ after he returns. It asks and answers the question, who shall dwell on God's holy hill? Let's sing it all together from Psalm 15. Everybody together, beginning verse 1. Together. Brothers, thank you to all of you who sang along with us on that one this morning. And let's take a look at where we are on God's calendar in relation to the Hebrew in relation to the Roman calendar. Now, we have it on our lower third here, and today, as I mentioned at the opening, it's the 14th day of the 10th month. In this particular year, we're going to have 13 months this year because we're in what's called an extended year on God's calendar. It's as if it were a leap year on the Roman calendar, but technically, even though some will call it a leap year, it's technically not the same thing as a leap year by strict definition. It's an extended year, or it is correct, as the Jewish keepers of the calendar will sometimes call an extended year, a pregnant year. You know, it's bigger than the rest of the years. It has 13 months instead of just 12. And all right, we looked at where we are on the Roman calendar there. Let's see. What do I want to show you here? One the other way. Oh, yeah, I mentioned last night that we would double-check today's Hebrew date on the by some other sources, and we can do that right from our own website on cogtv.org. We have a button dedicated to the date today on the Hebrew calendar. It also, if you scroll up a little bit, shows you the date in small print on the Roman calendar. Roman Gregorian date is the 18th day of the 12th month, 18th day of December. You can see at the bottom. Excuse me, with a reminder to advance the Hebrew date at local sunset, and it'll do that automatically a little bit after sunset, but not always right on the split second or the split minute on our website that's called Date Today. So if you're checking it at sunset on a Friday night, chances are you're going to need to go ahead and advance the date by one day because it's still showing the earlier part of the day's date. But we're well into the Sabbath. It's now showing you correctly. Today is the 14th day of the 10th month. The 10th month in by the Jewish reckoning, they call it Tevet. Tevet. And but it's the 10th month, and that we do have on. If you go to our calendar page, on all the web pages on the right hand side there are menu buttons, and I'm in the process of making those menu buttons bigger. As you can see, some of them are small, some of them are a little bigger, and I'm making them bigger so it's easier to get your finger on them, even if you're using a small size cell phone. You know, it's hard to. You know, if they're too small, it's hard to get your finger on those and make them advance to the linked page you want. But make them bigger and get your finger on them. There's a section on our calendar page. Well, actually, this is on the Date Today page because that's what's grayed out right there. That shows you the names. It shows you the numbers of the month according to the names. And I'm using a source. Even though this is our own web page and our own website, I'm actually linking to outside sources. And that outside source that gives us the current day's date on the Hebrew calendar, they don't call them by the numbered months, they call them by the Jewish reference to those months. And so sometimes you got to go over and have a source where you can convert that. Let's see, and I have that. On our calendar page, and even on the Date Today page, if you scroll up and down on the page, you can come to a section that's labeled as names of the months in God's calendar. And in numeric order, month number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and even 13 for the extended year months. Right after that, we've got all the names that those months can be referred to as. Let's see, let's bring that full screen for a moment so you can see it a little better. And I need to take the yellow highlighting down one, I think, down two, actually. This actually, though, is a photograph. It's not the actual web page that I'm showing you right now. If I were to go to our actual web page, we do have that yellow banding showing you the current month. I've got it moved down, I think, to the 10th month. But you can see Tibet there. I guess I need to add to this the spelling that's in this version of a Hebrew calendar where they call it Tevet. Because in the King James version of the Bible, in Esther 2 and verse 16, it's referred to as Tebeth or Tebeth, T-E-B, like boy, E-T-H. But the Jewish people are rendering it as with that B as a V, Tevet, but same thing as Tebeth. And the point is, it actually works out to be month number 10 on God's holy sacred calendar. Now, for me, it's easier when you're trying to compute where's the next feast day. If you reference them the way God originally referenced them, had them referenced on the calendar as month numbers, month number 10 is where we are now. Let's put the lower third back up here. We'll look at it. It's the 14th day of the 10th month. So that puts us about in the middle of the month. In the 10th month, there's 29 days in the 10th month generally every year. And so that means you go outside at night, and in the middle of the month, you've got a full moon. And the last couple of nights, I've been outside for various reasons, and it looks like a nice street light outside. Everything is, you can tell it's night, but it's still nicely lighted. It's not pitch dark. It's not pitch black. It's just, it's nicely lighted in a full moon. And that's where we are in the moon. So new moon is practically is black. I mean, there's no light on a new moon. And then as the new moon starts to advance, you see a little crescent, a little more crescent, and then quarter crescent, and then a half moon. And then in the middle of the month, we have a full moon, which works out really nice during Feast of Tabernacles to have a full moon. It's full moon, since Feast of Tabernacles begins on the 15th, the middle of the 7th month, you got a full moon to start the Feast of Tabernacles and through the Feast of Tabernacles. That's nice. Come outside at night and see a big old moon during the Feast of Tabernacles. Same thing during Days of Unleavened Bread. First day of Unleavened Bread is the 15th of the first month. So that's the middle of the first month. You got a full moon starting you a full moon and through the Days of Unleavened Bread. You're practically full moon. It'll get smaller toward the end of the Days of Unleavened Bread, and toward the last great day, the moon's getting smaller because it's receding to turn around to become black and start another new moon, another new month, a week after the Feast of Tabernacles is over, a week after the Days of Unleavened Bread are all over. So this year, God willing, we're planning during Days of Unleavened Bread in Birmingham, Alabama, to have an annual spring dance. And if enough people want to come, we'll even be holding daily services. Not as a church group, but that'll be for scattered brethren. And, even if you're hanging your hat with some group, as long as you're keeping the weekly and annual Sabbaths, you'll be welcome to come to the spring dance. You'd be welcome to sit in among the meetings as long as you're not trying to pitch everybody to come to your group and be a member of your group. God's end-time apostle taught us we were not even members of the corporate structure, the radio church of God, or the worldwide church of God, and he instructed us. He asked twice. He asked in 1950, at least twice. In 1956, at a Feast of Tabernacles, he asked, "Brethren, how many of you are saying you're members of the Armstrong movement?" And then he asked them to not do that. And he said, "Well, how many of you are saying you're members of the radio church of God?" And he said, "Please don't be doing that. Don't tell people you're members. He said, you're not. You're members of the Church of God, a spiritual organism." He said that back in 1956. And he didn't change his mind. He didn't change that. He did change the wording, because once in 1968 or 9, was it? 67, 68, 69, somewhere in there, toward the end of the 60s, as Mr. Armstrong saw that, hey, we are a worldwide work, we should not just be calling it the Radio Church of God for our corporate name. We're going to rename it what it is, the Worldwide Church of God. And as he explained, he had to put a banana peeling, an adverb on the name to incorporate, because another group already had the corporate name, the Church of God, without any adjective on it, without any banana peeling, no adjective. Church of God, another group had it. He said they didn't really necessarily deserve to have the name because they weren't doing everything that God taught us to do through Mr. Armstrong, and they weren't really part of the Philadelphia era of the work. And so he said, even though they don't really deserve the name because they've become a dead work, overall dead because they rejected the annual Sabbath. Some of them say, oh, well, we can keep them if we want to, but we don't have to. And some of those have asked to come to various groups' feast sites, and they've wound up causing problems because they're spreading this untruth that you can keep God's holy days, annual Sabbaths, if you want to, but you don't have to. Buzz, wrong, excuse me. Yes, we do have to. God makes it a command. We keep the Sabbaths, annual and weekly. But he also tells us to call it a delight, and those of us who do keep them, and keep them with a right spirit, and who have God's Spirit, we find God blesses us. He blesses that day. And good things happen, and we find that day to be a delight to us. So that's an instruction easy to keep. and observe, to call the day a delight before the eternal. And when we do that, then he further blesses us. But we're on the 14th day of the 10th month in a year that has 13 months in it this year. So we have half a month to go in this 10th month, and we have all of the 11th, 12th, and 13th month, 3 full months to go. Then a half a month into the first year to the next feast day. So effectively, with 3 full months and 2 half months, we have 4 months to the next feast day, being Passover. And Passover is not a holy day. You can work on that day, but of course you don't want to be working the evening of that day when we're commanded to observe the Passover memorial with the foot washing service and the drinking of the wine and the taking of the bread. Christ's blood and Christ's body. And this year, April 14, on April 14, at sunset on April 14 is when the 14th of the first month begins at sunset, and then immediately after sunset, we're doing the Passover memorial. We plan to live stream that again this year, as we have in the past 10, 11, 12 years on cogtv.org, sabbath.tv. And we'll probably continue to have Mr. Armstrong's conducting of that service, in the last one he did in 1983 in Pasadena, California, at headquarters. It's outstanding Passover service, and it's easy to go through with him. We'll probably cut in there just a little bit live, but for the most part, we'll have Mr. Armstrong conducting that service, which you can keep right from your home. And there are instructions from headquarters back from when Mr. Armstrong was alive on how to observe it at home. The head of household could even conduct it himself from your home if you wanted to do that. You may do that. But that'll be April 14, the evening of April 14, and those who might become interested in attending an assembly for the whole week, or coming in just for fellowship for the spring dance, we've got that slated for April 20. And we're still working out the arrangements for that. We have 4 months before that time, so, we have a little bit of time for getting this together. We'll have a 16-piece orchestra playing for it, a big dance band, and you can hear that dance band from our website. In fact, I wanted to show you our calendar page, so I'm going to flip back over there. Now, the page it's showing right now is showing from a page called Date Today. You see Date Today is grayed out in the menu area on the right side. That's because we're on that page called Date Today, and that shows you, like I just showed you, today's date on the Hebrew calendar, and in small print it also shows you today's date on the Roman calendar. You can look at a regular calendar, and you can wonder, hey, well, what day is it today? Well, you punch over here, we'll just tell you. It's the 18th day of December on the Roman calendar. It's the 14th day of the 10th month, Tebeth, on God's holy sacred calendar, the Hebrew calendar. But if we go over to this menu area here and we press, see, which thing were we talking about? Oh, yeah. I was going to show you something on the calendar page. Let's do that real quick first. I'll hit the calendar button, and it shows you a summary of the holy days for the whole year in 2022. And if you keep scrolling down, there's a calendar that you can print that out, cut it, and it'll fit in your pocket, like a business card. It's business card size. For 2022, all the holy days are highlighted. The holy days are highlighted in purple. The feast days, the Feast of Passover is highlighted in red, and the evening before Passover, to remind you, that day after sunset, we should be doing the Passover memorial service, is highlighted in pink. Kind of a shade of red, a light shade of red is pink, so the evening before the full day of Passover, we want to know that night we're doing the Passover memorial, the foot washing, the drinking of the wine, Christ's blood, the taking of the bread, his body. And then in a darker shade of green is the wave sheaf day. The light shades of green are the 50 days of our Pentecost, our count 50, our 50 count, to Pentecost, which is highlighted in purple because it is a holy day. Pentecost is. And that is day 50, not day 51, as some wrongly teach, using a perverted translation and version of what's called the Bible. And then the Feast of Tabernacles, the Day of Atonement, and the Feast of Trumpets and Feast of Tabernacles. Well, Feast of Trumpets first, then Day of Atonement, a day we don't eat, and Feast of Tabernacles with the last great day. The feast days that are not holy days during the Feast of Tabernacles, we have highlighted in a light blue shading, so you know, oh yeah, those are the Feast of Tabernacles days. So that's all on that section of the calendar page, which you can print, cut it out, stick it in your pocket. Then if let's say your boss wants you to plan ahead and do something on a certain day, a month or two away, you can whip it out of your pocket real quick and say, hey, boss, can't make that day. Remember, we talked. I have to be off on these annual holy days, so can we do that on another day? Your boss say, oh, I didn't make that agreement with you. I won't work you on your holy days, so okay, we'll do it another day. Or if you're in court and the judge asks everybody, all right, we need to postpone today's hearing or set a certain motion, certain special kind of hearing or trial on a certain day. Can you all make it on blankety blank day? Or if he just says it's going to be that day, you can speak up and say, Your Honor, I can't make it that day. And if he gets mad at you and says, why can't you make it that day? You can explain, Your Honor, I keep the annual holy days. They're in the Bible. The Jewish people keep them. And, you know, you just consider me spiritually Jewish. I have to be in church service that day. And the judge will maybe grump and complain around and try to coerce you to come to court. And you say, well, Your Honor, I'll have to take the penalty if you're going to make it mandatory. I can't be here that day. But they're usually accommodating. And there are hearings you can do if you're not accorded your religious beliefs against the judge. There are motions and things you can make to get another judge if one is not going to let you off for your holy day. Other reasons that you might need, just even making commitments with friends. Hopefully, especially though, your friends, your best friends, people you fellowship with, you know, there's a scripture that asks us, what fellowship does light have with darkness? That should tell us, that's similar to the scripture that says, don't become unequally yoked with unbelievers. So most of our fellowship should be with brethren, and those of you who attempt to do that, that's greatly appreciated. Even some of you who are visiting people in the prisons or keeping communications with them, that's a good thing, whether they're brethren or not. That's a good thing to encourage people who are in such situations, and especially if a brother for some reason has goofed up, can happen, and is in jail or prison. It's very good if brethren are consoling him. You remember the John the Baptist wound up in a prison, a dungeon prison, and you know, Christ encouraged seeing him and visiting him. And even when John asked a question, he told some of the disciples, go, tell John, go to the prison and answer John's question and tell him. And so, all right, that's available. And on our website also is, if you go to a button called it's up here toward the top, they're kind of alphabetical order, except we put numeric first. So 2022 Spring Dance Video, I put it right under the homepage button. It's right above the Archive Video button. If you press the Spring Dance Video button, you can get details about what we're planning for a spring dance during the Days of Unleavened Bread 2022 on April 20th is the date we're planning this for. A big 16-piece dance band will be playing for us during that feast. And if you want to listen to the dance band that we're going to have play, there's a video of their performance from July 4 at American Village in Montevallo, Alabama, where 6,000 to 10,000 people come through the village that day, and the band plays for them there. That's a village, American Village. If you're in Alabama, a great place to visit. They actually have replicas of the early Republic buildings of Washington, D.C. area, and it includes a replica of today's Oval Office. Same size, same type of furniture exactly inside of the Oval Office. If the President of the United States were to be in Alabama, he could go to American Village, go inside the Oval Office in American Village, and TV cameras could be focused on him, and video-wise, you wouldn't know the difference between him being in the Oval Office at American Village in Alabama as opposed to the Oval Office in Washington, D.C. Looks exactly the same. You can go in there and sit down behind the desk, the President's desk in the Oval Office at American Village in Montevallo. Now, the spring dance we're planning to do it in downtown Birmingham at the Birmingham Museum of Art. That has an upper plaza level that's open air. And we have a safety area inside. If it were raining, we can come use the cafe area inside. But we would appreciate it if God hasn't decided it's time for the Revelation 12:14, two wings of a great eagle at that point in time. Would appreciate it to have nice weather that night, Father, and be able to dance outside under the stars in the open air on that beautiful plaza that overlooks the Birmingham Sheraton Hotel just across the freeway. And then on the other side of the Birmingham Museum of Art is a beautiful, architecturally beautiful hotel called the Tutwiler. And they just wrote me this week, the sales manager, and said, Stephen, I can give you 20 rooms at a big discount. So those of you that want to sign up for the dance early and who want to come here, we'll tell you about the deal that the Tutwiler Hotel is making for 20 rooms. If you're coming as a single, I'd like to work out some arrangement where, some of you men would be willing to share with other men, some of you women be willing to share with other women your room, so that you could double up, triple up, quadruple up in a room, cut your nightly hotel expense down. And let's say if you could quadruple in a room, singles, if it were all singles, those 20 rooms would handle 80 people. And if we wind up with 70 people at the dance, we might even move the dance inside the Tutwiler Hotel. It has a nice dance floor that'll accommodate up to 70. And if we have more, though, we'll definitely stay with the arrangement for the Birmingham Museum of Art. Big, colossally big dance floor up on that huge plaza, and real nice out there under the stars. That could be a nice evening. See the full moon, because that'll be still be somewhat full moon on April 20, because the day numbers match up in April with the day numbers on God's Holy Sacred calendar. The 20th day of April during the daytime is the 20th day of the first month. And just a few days after the middle of the month, it's still somewhat a full moon that night. It's kind of nice. It'll have a little, won't be full moon, but it'll still be basically a full moon, the night of our spring dance. But if you want to hear this orchestra, I'm not going to play it for you today, but you can go play it if you want to today or tonight after sunset, depending how you feel about it. It's going to be the orchestra that plays during the spring dance, and they're quite good. In saying that, it tempts me to say, here, give a short listen. I've done that a couple of times on the Sabbath, but I'm not going to do it today. If you want to do it after we're off, you can go find our spring dance page and play that yourself. And if you scroll on down, it'll just tell you the details about who the band is and what we'll be doing and where the Birmingham Museum of Art is on the map, and just some details and the pricing and how you can get a huge discount if you order early and get an early bird ticket for the 2022 spring dance. Now, something else on our website that you may want to check out, we have a button called the Archive Video button, and when you press that, it takes you to a page that offers you a big purple button right next to me here. If you press that, it plays the last live video stream that we did that was complete. And so as of right now, while I'm speaking to you live, you press that button, you'll get last night's Bible study. About an hour after our live stream Sabbath service is over this morning, you'll get this Sabbath service on that big purple button. But to get last night's Bible study later in the day, after our live stream here is off, you just scroll down a little bit. Oh, I hope I didn't accidentally hit the button, but scroll down a little bit, and there's an index by date. The first index is last night's Bible study, December 17, Friday night Sabbath Eve Bible study, with Mr. Armstrong speaking on why does God allow human suffering. That was a very good talk by Mr. Armstrong. If you didn't see our Bible study last night, I would encourage you, go press that link, and it'll take you to last night's Bible study. And there was more. I talked on something that you might appreciate hearing. I gave some scriptures that related to the holiday that's coming up a week from today, and how to talk to people that ask you, well, why don't you keep Christmas? Well, don't you understand? It's the birthday of Jesus Christ. And you can come back and ask them, well, is it? You know, show me in the Bible. Or do you realize that in the Bible there's, even though it's not the exact date of Christ's birth that's given, the season in which Christ was given is shown there in Luke 2, verse 8. And that's not winter. And you could go through that with a person and show them. We discussed that in some detail last night. If you want to go back to last week's Sabbath service, just scroll on down a little more. You'll see that on December 11, 1 week ago today, we had Sabbath service with Mr. Armstrong speaking on Are We Living in the Last Days? And there was more. We had our singing, and I did some talking. And the night before that, December 10, was a Friday night Bible study. Are we living in the last, let's see, that was on the plain truth about Christmas. So a week ago, last night's Bible study, if you want to cover some details by God's end-time apostle explaining the plain truth about Christmas, that's there for you. And then you can keep going on down for 10 years of the various dates of the Sabbath and Friday night Bible studies that we have online for you. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. We go back 10 years worth of those. So you probably won't want to go back that far. And the thing I would encourage you is if you missed last night's Bible study, there was some excellent information given to us by God's end-time apostle. I gave you some things you might find beneficial, and you can get that from our archive video page and hit the link to go to it. And then again, the link is called, it's grayed out here because we're on that page, it's called Archive Video. And then the button above that take you to information about the spring dance. The button above that, the one that just says COG TV, is our homepage. I hadn't made it bigger yet, but I think you can get your finger on that, and you hit that button, and it takes you to the homepage, the page that comes up when you just type in cogtv.org. And when you go to the top, there's this banner that you're seeing right now, and if you hover over it, it changes the picture like that. And I'll see, I actually hit it and it opened up. But when you first come on that page, it views with just our letters, cogtv.org, and the banner. And I must have hit a button. I hit a button from a page that takes you to an offering page, which if you want to contribute, pay your tithes to this ministry, to God via this ministry, you can do that from, there's a page you can scroll onto. I'm going to back it up. I wasn't going to try to pitch you for that, but since I accidentally hit it, you can be aware we've got that. But here's our home page. And, oh yeah, from the home page, if you hit that button that would normally take you to the home page, I think it will take you to a PayPal screen where you can make an offering. All right, so there's a look at our webpage. And brethren, because I am coming down with a sore throat, we're going to sing Blessed and Happy is the Man Who Never Walks Astray again only we're going to do it with a version that has the Spanish with it and just the piano, and then we're going to close early for today's service. And if you didn't see last night's Bible study, it'll give you more time to say, hey, yeah, I want to go hear Mr. Armstrong talk about the subject he gave us last night. But let's sing as we wrap it up today. Let's sing once again, music only, and it'll have both the Spanish and the English version. English on the left side, Spanish words on the right side. For blessed and happy is the man who never walks astray. Brother, thank you very much, whether you're saying in English or Spanish or some other language. Thank you very much for singing along with us. Thank you for joining us today for this Sabbath service, AM to the U.S., PM to Europe and UK and the Middle East and Israel and the Far East and elsewhere around the world. God willing, and the creek don't rise, we'll plan to be back here this coming Friday night, next Sabbath Eve, with the Bible study. And brethren, in the meantime, for the rest of today, have a great, wonderful, refreshing time of the Sabbath, meditating on God's Word, spending some time in prayer, maybe some fellowship with other brethren. And thanks for being here. Till next time, your host, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreath. Shabbat Shalom.